Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Marco.
Sean.
Can you visualize this conversation? You never know where I'm going to go, do you?
No, lately I'm scared. Honestly, you're getting weirder and weirder. But I can visualize.
I'm getting weirder and weirder, but I am starting things weirder and weirder. That's for sure.
Well, I'm prepared. So yes, I can visualize, but I can also prioritize.
Yes, that's clearly the two things that we need to do, especially when we're talking about risk management. And for most things in life, I think if you can't see where you want to go and understand the risk that you might have getting there and visualize that in a way that you can talk about it and hopefully mitigate the risk on your journey, then you're kind of missing the point. But that's not for me to say, Marco. That's not for me to say. I can say because I know the space well, but saying it and doing it are two different things too. So let's get into it. For folks watching, they see our guest sitting there going, "Hey, when am I going to jump in here?" For those listening, we do have a guest. It's not just me and Marco, and we have Ahmad joining us from Brinqa. Thanks, Ahmad, for being on.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks, Marco, for having me today.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Yeah, we are excited, and yes, I can visualize, and that was very nice of you, Sean, to ask me if I can do that, because I have some imagination on my side, and this is what we call an origin story. So every time we talk about how a company got started, what the vision is behind it, the why, I just figured like it's really kind of like the hero journey, like in the story that we read and the movie that we watch, but it's real. So this is real. This is the company that you got going. So I'm curious to know how that happened. So why not start with you telling us a little bit about
your own journey.
No, absolutely. Just briefly for folks who are not familiar with Brinqa, we are a vulnerability management platform that allows organization to aggregate their security findings, vulnerabilities, known issues across their attack surfaces, which includes data center, applications, as well as cloud nowadays. And then, as Sean was alluding to, enrich that with threat intelligence, business context, so we can really prioritize things that matter the most to an organization and then help orchestrate and remediate that. So that's briefly about what Brinqa does. Brinqa has been around for a little over 13 years. We have had an interesting journey, perhaps a little bit different from a typical startup nowadays. This is my second company. We're based in Austin, Texas. I'm in Northern California. My previous company I started in Los Angeles and ended up selling to Sun Microsystems in 2008. That's where I met my partner in crime, Hilda Perez, who's a co-founder of the company and also our employee number one, Will Drosty. Really, really smart guy. And the coming out of that experience of the first startup, it was in cybersecurity around identity and access management. We were using machine learning before it was cool to use machine learning in cybersecurity to drive people's access and roles and really understand. And as we were at Sun and I was looking to see what's next I want to do, one of the areas we heard a lot about is around risk management and ability to take a data-driven approach to risk management. If you go back to 2007, 2008, risk management was all about, or cybersecurity risk management was all subjective, is all opinions. If Ahmad thinks that my risk is high or low, that's what I'm reporting. We're not really actually using what controls are really put in place, what the outcomes of those controls are, how should we understand and look at their impact? So we decided to start Brinqa to take a really data-driven approach to risk management or cybersecurity risk management, because we believe that this data already exists, but it needs to be consumed and processed and reported, and as you guys talked about, really visualize and prioritize.
So, Ahmad, I mean, so many questions already for me, but I think let's just dig into it. I mean, one of so you talk about bringing data together and risk management. And one of the things that always comes to mind when I think about risk is, well, what's the scope that you're looking at? And you touched on vulnerabilities, and you touched on things in the cloud. So kind of paint the picture for us what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And yeah, where's the scope for where you start and stop?
Absolutely. So I think that's an interesting question, because when we started Brinqa, the scope or your attack surface was pretty much your perimeter, right? Things that you knew in terms of your inside your firewall. Over the last 15 years, things have changed. So now when we talk about the scope and the attack surface, we look at everything that could be exploited. So that's your traditional servers, desktops, workstation, but also code, application security, looking at, people have a lot of developers, organizations have these GitHub repositories. They're managing digital certificates, secret keys, APIs. They're all part of the scope. And then you move to the cloud and you're looking at runtime, you're looking at Lambda functions, you're looking at data storage. So when we look at the scope, we're talking about your entire attack surface, essentially anything that is either exposed externally or not. And as Sean, with the zero trust, there is no such thing as boundaries or perimeters anymore. So that is the scope for us. It's your entire attack surface. And then the second part is, well, what are the known gaps? We're dealing with known knowns. To quote Donald Rumsfeld, you remember that press conference. But this is known knowns. We're not talking about things that we need to discover, right? There's a lot of tools and technology that organizations have invested in to determine and to find these gaps, either vulnerabilities, so unpatched software, end of life, obsolete stuff, or misconfiguration in the cloud, or using a third party library in the code has a license issues. All of these things are reported. Now you need to correlate it to those assets and prioritize, because not everything is going to be critical for business. Not everything is going to be, we need to go fix it right away, because there's a cost associated with the response aspect of it. So that's to wrap up the first part of your question around the scope. That's when we talk about vulnerability or risk, we're looking at the variety of assets, and we're looking at the known gaps or security findings that exist already in an organization.
So that information exists through one or more tools, and so you're bringing that in to then do some fun magic with, I presume, right?
Yeah.
To really, I guess, is it the context of the environment and the business? And so where does that stuff come from?
Comes from, that's
internal
absolutely.
and other intelligence, business market stuff. Where's that coming from?
Multiple sources. Threat intel sources, multiple threat intelligence sources that exist. They're in open source format. There's commercial feeds. Normally, we have 16 or 17 different feeds out of the box, but organization could have other commercial feeds that they integrate with. What we're looking for is real-time, up-to-date information, things that are mentioned in social media, things that are trending, things that are 0-day or being exploited in the wild, as what's referred to commonly, and then combining that with the business context. And that's where things get a little tricky, right? Where it seems obvious that the business context would exist in any organization, but it turns out that it's all over the place. There's not a real clean repository of information where you can just go tap in and say, what is this asset? Who owns it? What does it do? What kind of business function it performs, or what kind of business service it supports? So Brinqa, as part of this setup or part of this what we call a building up our knowledge graph is connecting those dots. So we would connect to CMDBs, spreadsheets, data lakes, any source of information that can get us a little bit about what that asset could be supporting, where it exists, or network monitoring tools. But we also have dynamic ways of using patterns to recognize either it's a naming convention, either it's network range, either it's tags. So unfortunately, in the broader set of cyber and IT, there is a lack of standardization or sort of a blueprint for how to organize or how to map the assets to the business services. But we filled that gap with the number of methods that I just described. But that's essentially the goal, to get to a really build a context that helps us to prioritize in a way that makes sense to a business owner, not just a technical person.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking migrations from on-premises to the cloud might change some of that stuff. M&A, certainly, the lack of standards or commonality across that. You just end up with this really crazy environment. So
absolutely.
Absolutely. No,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ahmad. No. I wanted you to finish your thought.
I was just going to finish on that point where I think with the digital transformation, even though the cloud is still sort of under 10% of IT, there are things that we're doing a little bit better, I would say. When people are moving, there's not just a rip and replace from on-prem to cloud. So organizations are organizing this data into accounts, into proper tags. We can do a perhaps better job, but at least it's improved in this migration. So I think this cloud migration or digital transformation has provided us an opportunity to better structure and organize and assign ownership. So the post-incident workflow or processes could be more predictable and automated.
Got it. So what I want to go back here is into where you presented, and I go back to Sean's visualization, right? So I feel like when you said, machine learning wasn't cool when we started, but it was there. So you had this vision. And so here's the first reference to visualization. But also, I feel like now the environment, it's not really a static picture anymore. It's a dynamic environment. So you can't just say, took this picture, did the compliance, I'm good. Come back in a year, right? So because things happen, it's a moving picture. And I'm wondering, as you have had this vision of machine learning to be used, I mean, we've gone a long way with AI now, and I'd like to know what has been the journey since when you started to where you are now.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think that's a very good point. The static nature of the security reporting and measurement changed. And it used to be very compliance driven, right? You have auditors coming in. You need to generate this report. It's maybe a yearly audit, maybe it's a quarterly audit, but that was the frequency of things. And over the last 15 years, we went from that yearly, quarterly to now daily. It's no longer a reactive thing. The reporting aspect of it, we're consuming this data on a daily basis. We're on an average connecting to 75 or more different sources of information, different security tools, data sources in an organization, and bringing that, processing all this data, stitching it together, prioritizing. So there's a lot of processing, compute aspect happens on a daily basis, and then the risk is reported. So it's no longer a quarterly thing or a monthly thing. As I said, it's very much things are changing. You have new instances being launched in the cloud. New projects are being started. People are putting data in the storage or S3 bucket. It's constantly being discovered, constantly being scanned, constantly being analyzed and reported. So it's a pretty big shift. The product we were building in 2008, 2009 had to evolve over the years into a product that actually is near real-time reporting and responding to the changing landscape as well, right? The new products are being launched. So we're constantly developing these new integrations. Similarly, the types of asset, back to Sean's question, it used to be a server, a desktop, now a Lambda function. Or going forward, I can see these LLMs, these large learning models, would be a source of uh, uh, problem for a lot of folks, the APIs that are interacting with them. So it's going to change, and we're going to evolve. And Brinqa is pretty well suited, because the way we have structured our platform, to dynamically adjust and change, and react to the ever-changing landscape of the assets.
And I'm wondering, still talking about this, how has been the conversation with your customers and how it has been changing? Like, like maybe some case studies, maybe some industry that have seen these as a huge benefit to start with. And then, there's always the first comers and then the other follow. How is received by the customer, how was received, and how is, I'm assuming a lot of company now, they are looking for these, while before maybe you had to sell it more.
True. Absolutely. When we started, the complexity was still there in the organization. But again, if you're a large company, your Fortune 500 organization, that problem is unmanageable for you. But if you're a smaller organization, you have smaller data sets, your network is fairly small, you got a few number of users, you could manage it without something like Brinqa. So early on, and since we're talking about the origin story, Brinqa has been bootstrapped from day one, or was bootstrapped up until 2021. So for most part of our existence, we had to sell our software like the good old-fashioned way, make money, and use that money to innovate and pay people as well. So we always target customers that had the real problem, could put value to it, and give us the opportunity as well. And that was the larger organization. But over the last, as I said, 10 plus years, the number of security controls, the number of security tools increased, the data volume and variety increased, where it used to be Fortune 500 moved down market, and anybody even at Brinqa size has the same problem as your top retailer or airline in the world, because we are using on the average 7,500 different security tools. As Sean would tell you, security loves to do best of breed. Security doesn't believe, in the let's go and adopt Oracle or IBM, a platform. We're going to go and for this particular control, tool A, tool B. So you end up with this complex environment. And so our customer base, or our use case, where in the early days was appealing to a large organization because of the volume, is now resonates across the board, across the industries or verticals, because of the complexity that is cybersecurity today.
So I want to touch on the bootstrap point. It's no secret that there's a lot of investors looking to make money on investments in cybersecurity, and certainly no lack of companies that want money to help them grow faster and solve problems faster for their organizations. But I think there's some unique value to customers when an organization is bootstrapped, because I think, I don't know, I want to get your perspective, but I think the risk innovation equation and where reality strikes, it looks a little different in that situation. So tell me a little bit about that.
True. That has been my experience. I'm sure people who have gone and raised hundreds of millions of dollars before even having a product, I'm sure have different experience, and they can speak to that. But what I know that what worked for us, now I would say one thing, because of my previous exit, I was fortunate to be able to fund my own company. I was the initial investor for first 5 years. And, if we talk about the entrepreneurship, I mean, there is something to be said about access to capital. I mean, you can have a great idea, you can be the smartest guy in the room. Capital is still pretty key. Now, how much capital is what need is debatable, I think. And that's where I took the path of, we're going to build a product that's used by customers. There's a value, and initial funding, I'll do it myself. Now, the approach I took, and yes, we couldn't go very fast on sales and marketing, couldn't spend a lot of money building a network of advisors, and a spokesperson couldn't get the biggest booth at Star RSA or Black Hat, couldn't definitely get the boxing ring going at our booth. But what our focus was, well, customers and product. Because if you're not good at, or you don't have money to spend on sales or big offices or beanbags or ping pong tables, you better have a really good product that somebody's willing to pay money for. So our entire company, everybody who worked, had single focus. We need to build a product that's used by customers, solves a real problem. You make money. So it's easier, or people talk about customer centric, but it's very different when you know that down to a support engineer, that what they're doing and how they respond to this ticket is going to result into a renewal or upsell or expansion into that account. So that really helped us and allowed us to be very laser sharp focus on our product and capabilities. We had to differentiate. We had to win. It's not an option to win one of the 10 deals. We had to win 5 of the 10 deals. So I think that just made us a better product company. And now with the funding that we did take eventually, now we're spending on sales and marketing and other areas as well. But it helps us to build on a really solid foundation. Personally, I just, my personality, I just couldn't risk somebody else's money or that amount of money on an idea. It didn't feel right to me that unless I can see this working, I'm going to go to Sean and say, Sean, write me $100 million check. And you're right, there is a lot of money out there, and it's a bit of sometimes a gamble as well for investment. But my approach was real problem, real solution. We can make money. Now it's about how do we scale this organization and do things that we couldn't do organically.
Well, I think there's a big lesson here in for the business world, and I don't know, many organizations in general. And also, I think it reflects on the view on the info security industry, where if you had the money, yeah, let me get everything I can, and I'm going to show that I'm really secure because I got this, and this. But then if there is no coordination, if there is no synergy, if there is not a vision, then what you got? You got a lot of stuff, and you're still not resolving the problem. So the fact that you're going concentric, starting from, I'm going to resolve this, and then eventually grow on that, I think it pays. And I think it did for you, for sure.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Are you still going to go with that in the future?
Next time around,
answer the way. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a very good question. I've thought about it. I think I've learned lessons. I think there's positives and negatives. I think you can probably do a hybrid of something where, if I do this again, it has taken, 15 years. That's a long time. It's taken longer than I hoped, and it's been tougher than I thought. But I don't know if there's grass is always greener on the other side. I think you got to trade true to yourself. You know what you're good at, and you know what you're not at this point in my career and life. So I think if I do something again, I'll probably stay close to my character and what has worked for me versus trying to go to catch some new shiny object or approach. Yeah.
So I think if they're with a lot of freedom and perhaps a lot of runway, because of a large amount of capital, some companies have the freedom to do A/B tests with product features, or A, B, C, D, E, F tests with product features to see what sticks. And if you're more focused, which it sounds like you were from the beginning, you have that A test, right? Does A work? And you better get A right to keep moving forward, which tells me, one, you're smart, and or two, you have connections with people that had a problem that they were able to communicate to you, which then goes back to you're smart and can understand what they're telling you to then build something that they can actually use and value. So talk to me about the maybe a use case, and I don't know if you want to pick a company story, depository trust, or app attack service. There's a couple on your website there. Talk to us about a scenario in an organization where your focus on what you're delivering nailed it for them.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right about the focus, right? I think that I'll come to the use case in a minute, but it's very, just as an entrepreneur and folks are listening, it's very tempting when you have a large sum of capital that you can deploy to get distracted. See some use case that feels adjacent, you feel like you have smart engineers, your product can probably do it, and it's going to cost us X amount of dollars. Okay, we have it. Why not go for that? And it's really hard to say no to a lot of things, and you have to get really good at it. You're going to say yes to very, very few things. And for us, it was always stay true to what we do well. There's a big market, and how did I know there's a big market? Is because, Sean, I don't think I'm smart, but I think I know a lot of smart people who told me a real problem and said, if you can solve and address this, which is, DTCC, Department Trust and Clearing Corporation, in New York, been our customer for quite some time, and they, they develop a lot of software. Is for a lot of financial services, you can't just go buy software off the shelf, and for that type of organization, they need a very specialized software. So they have large volume of developers writing code, but it needs to be secure. So they don't want to stop the developers from going through their releases and putting features and functions out, but they also wanted to make sure that there is a governance layer and security layer which is really integrated in the developer life cycle and work experience. And that's where Brinqa came in, where we automated and orchestrated their entire application security platform, application security needs, to look at the projects, look at the type of application, and invoke the certain types of controller checks. And based on that, determine, can it be moved to production? Can it be moved to UAT? Sort of go through the whole life cycle or not, and have gatekeeping events throughout that process. So really helped developers to think in terms of when they're ready to put the code out, and provide feedback throughout the way in a very secure way, but without slowing them down. And so it's a very data driven, really well integrated into a developer experience, as well as delivering a visibility to the management so they can pinpoint and look at their portfolio application, the teams, how they're working. So really get analytics, what team is doing better than A versus B, and looking at the third-party library. So there's a number of aspects that we provided them visibility into that enabled them to, again, continue with their core use case. Their bank or their financial services organization, that's their main job. That's what the developer should be working on, but making sure that they're delivering secure code through Brinqa's risk management and ability to aggregate and prioritize. So they're not just going and trying to fix everything that's reported. They can fix things that really matter. And that's what we have done. And we have done that for a number of customers. And that's been a huge value for DTCC.
I love it. And I won't put you on the spot as if I was talking to a systems engineer or sales solution architect here, but an overview of kind of how you fit into the operations of an organization, what teams interact with your service, your offering, and how much is on-prem, how much is in the cloud, all that kind of stuff to kind of help people understand where you fit into things.
Right. So I generally, where obviously a buyer is the CISO organization. Normally there's a vulnerability management team or application security team, or nowadays with the cloud security dedicated team. One of them is a buyer. However, that's generally where we start. And at the end, they're all stakeholders because their data is flowing through Brinqa. in the single console and single platform. We're a cloud-based solution. We do have some on-prem components because, again, we understand that this world is always going to be hybrid. You're not going to have 100% cloud. There's always other components. So we have a variety, or we can support on-prem sources as well. Our you asked for the users, and that's where I'll go back to Marco's question as well early. What has changed? It used to be that we were targeting and selling to the technical system administrator, vulnerability managers, or analysts. And today, the most users who log into Brinqa console are business users, business managers, application service owners. They're not technical. They just need to come in. They need to know what's important, what they need to work on for this next sprint. If they're a developer, if they're manager, they want to make sure that the key systems and applications they're supporting are have the right level of risk and threshold. So, the audience is actually pretty diverse for us, non-technical folks, the day-to-day users who are managing and supporting Brinqa, which is the CISO's organization.
So, yeah, I like that picture, and what it raises for me is kind of what happens, what's the outcome here, for those different roles. We're talking about visualization and prioritization, which I presume drives decisions and improves protection, posture of the protection, and reduces risk. So who benefits from this, and what's the outcome? How does the world look differently for an engineer, differently for SecOps, differently for vuln man and risk management, and those kind of roles?
Yeah, you're right in terms of the end goal is to reduce risk. Now, that's a pretty loaded statement, probably vague as well. What does that even mean? We want people to actually, as I said in the beginning, these are known knowns. Brinqa is trying to help organizations focus on things that matter the most at the end of the day. So we're not discovering new information. This information exists. Now we're trying to narrow it down. So the goal is to create actions where people do patch things that are critical, or install patches, or if they're end of life operating system or softwares that you have running, you do decommission and remove that. By removing that, you're reducing risk. If you have access or misconfiguration in the cloud, or using a third-party libraries in your code, or you have bad coding or code that could cause some harm, you're fixing and addressing that. So at the end of the day is making sure that there's a takeaway for any audience. If you're a developer, you're fixing that code. Your ops, you have an incentive and understanding of doing that. Now, a lot of time there's a misconception that developers don't want to change code, or ops doesn't want to fix things, or there's too many vulnerabilities we can't patch. And part of that is what I found that it's not that people don't want to do the work, is security often has a hard time presenting this data to their audience, or in a way that makes sense to them and drives actions. If you present somebody with 1 million vulnerability in a spreadsheet, I can guarantee you, no matter how many colors you use to change the columns, it's going to drive zero action. But if you say, you know what, these are the top 3 things or 4 things, if you do this month, that's good. For the rest, you have 90 days or 3. It's a collaborative, it's a very sort of constructive a way of reducing risk, and at the same time for management to really understand the ROI in terms of what is getting better. Maybe there is a dependency. Why do we have so many open source libraries that have these issues? Why don't we decommission something? Or maybe there's a framework that we should adapt, and that will reduce. So you do look at things holistically. You do things like in terms of progress and improvements, and that's what management looks for. I'm running a company. When my team comes and asks for more money for A or B, my question generally is, what happened to the money we've already spent? And security always had a hard time answering that question. Now this enables you. That's the other outcome. If you're looking to go and provide a ROI in terminology that your CFO or your board members, your CEO can understand, then you need to show progress. You need to show improvement on fundamental and a basic level. And those are the sort of outcomes we're looking for.
I mean, you had me a few moments ago when you're describing actually changing the way the company operates to get rid of things that are always vulnerable and requiring patches and eating up teams' times and all that stuff. And I mean, very rarely do we hear that. It's always just reduce the time after the fact, or reduce the risk after the fact. And I mean, that's what the business of security is all about, Marco, right?
Well, in my dreams, it become minimalist, and I like this approach because I go back to what I said before. It's more and more and more. You need this. You need this. And the way you're putting it is more like let's streamline. You just said it. Let's avoid to have this very wide perimeter and entries, and and I don't know. In an ideal world, there'd be security will be easy because the business will be easy. But that's me thinking about the future, which brings me to my famous last question, which is the future. So where do you see Brinqa go from here, and what is that you're looking into as your next step? So thinking hat, futuristic hat on, and go for it.
Obviously take over the world and land on the Mars. But in all seriousness, one of the reasons we took the funding is to grow our teams and capacity to able to serve a bigger customer base, right? The problem exists. It's a real problem. A lot of organizations struggle with operationalizing cybersecurity, vulnerability management especially. So our goal is to expand into North America, across the globe. We do have customers across the globe, but have local presence. So the big investment around that, and just continuing building better ways and improving and innovating our product. I think that the opportunity is really huge, and the complexity in the way the digital world is set up and working, I think is not going to reduce. Obviously we'll probably need another podcast to talk about sort of this new AI and what is that going to do for cyber. But if you go to Bard or HeyPi or one of these chatbots, first thing you ask them about what are the harms of AI. The first or second one is cybersecurity issues that are going to arise. So we don't know what it means yet, but I think it's going to create opportunities for organizations like Brinqa to understand those attack surfaces, understand how to model. Again, we're not going to be able to fix everything. We're not going to solve every problem, and it's all going to come down to prioritization, to what matter most, and accepting certain risks, and deciding what services and what product that you want to deploy. So I think that's continue to evolve with the changing landscape, and having a capital and a good private equity partner. I think it gives us a lot of runway to explore these options.
Yeah, and I love how you think, Ahmad. I mean, this has been a great conversation for me. I nerd out on risk management stuff, and I presume a lot of our listeners do too, at some level. And I mean, the story's cool. I mean, where you've come from and the focus that you've had, and the problem you're solving. I mean, the data exists. We know what's there. It's just a matter of understanding what's there, and streamlining things and simplifying things and making it possible to make a difference. And it seems like that's what you're doing. And I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you. Excited to see where things continue to go. And of course, we encourage folks to take a look at Brinqa and what you're doing, and connect with you. We'll include your social profile there for folks to reach out, and link to the website and all that good stuff. So, any final thoughts as we wrap up here?
No, I thank you for the opportunity. This is a topic, as you can tell, very dear near to my heart. I've been doing this for so long, and especially that bootstrap. You have to be either crazy or believe in what you're doing to continue as long as I have, and I do believe in this. Probably there's a level of craziness as well. So I really enjoyed this conversation. Hope people found it interesting. Love to have more conversation. If anybody's out listening, reach out to the information that Sean and Marco are going to share. So thank you again, Marco. It's very, very nice talking to you both.
Well, we want to thank you. We want to thank all the listener and the people that decided to watch this show, because there is going to be both version, and stay in touch with us. And again, there'll be a page where they'll find everything they need to know about Brinqa. And yeah, I actually, you gave me hope that my minimalist security dream will come through one day.
Yes.
We'll see. Yep. We'll see how that is. But I'm a little bit more positive than when we started. So that's good.
There you go.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Let's say goodbye.
I'm going to say goodbye with brinqa.com.
Yes.
Brinqa.com. All right. So thanks, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.
Ciao. Thank you, guys.
See ya. Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, share ITSP Magazine with your friends, family, and colleagues. Thank you for listening.